On my 21st birthday, the phone rang. After her obligatory good wish for a happy birthday, my mother asked me the question, not just for that year, for many years to come. Honey, would you be embarrassed if your mother was a truck driver? My budding feminist response, coming from my let's take down the patriarchy side, was go for it. And she did. She did. That fateful call about becoming my mother trucker meant that for the next 14 years, there was a glow about Mom, and she had an excitement about life that I had not seen for years. She has been physically gone since 2002, but I still remember that glow and the life lessons that came with her choice. This is a story about life and transformation. Transformation is one of our Unitarian Universalist values, and I got to witness its power through my mother's example. From Socrates, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. In this story of transformation, life dealt Mom blows, but she converted them into steps to a next better place. She did not take those blows, but seemed to use their energy to flow into the next productive movement. Without being a student of martial arts, she mastered life arts and thrived through transformation. Welcome to the story of a small-town princess, suburban housewife, white-collar vice president, and long-haul chemical truck driver for the chemical industry. So she was a chemical tank truck driver, not just any truck driver. This is all the history of Ernestine Bowman Witte, my mom, and it begins in a small Texas town, Gatesville. She was the only daughter of a merchant and farmer, and she became not only his princess, but his buddy. He had a son, but he was younger, and he took my mom as the first buddy to sign up for duty, and it kind of stuck. They went about doing his duties, and he would take her out for all of sport. She learned to garden, hunt, fish, and how to cook all the bounty they brought home, how to can the peaches they grew back in the orchard. In the summers, she went to work with him and began helping around the office. He owned the Central Freight Line franchise, that's hard for me to say this morning, for that part of Texas, and she learned to tolerate the office work so she could get to move the trucks around on the yard. In World War II, moving freight was important, and her work became more precious to her. In addition to that work for the war effort, she volunteered for the USO, and it provided social events when soldiers and sailors came home on leave. She filled in as a greeter and attended the occasional dance. At one of these dances, and I think she was only around 15 or 16, she met William Nathan Witte. You may recognize the name, that's my dad. He was a Marine. I'm sorry, it's breaking me up. He was a Marine home on leave from his station in the South Pacific. He attended his first USO dance at home in his dress blues, because he thought that's what you did. It impressed her because he stood out. He was 7 years older than she, so they had never met at school. His family lived on a farm a few miles from town, and they had never met until that dance. He asked her to dance a slow dance so they could talk, and they figured out while they were dancing that they were not related by blood or marriage, which is a rarity in a small town. I think by the time later that night when they won the jitterbug contest that they were in love already. Fast forward 3 years, the last 2 years of the war ended. The year of engagement her father demanded ended, and around age 18 or 19, she married Nathan. They moved to Waco so he could finish his last 2 years at Baylor. He had left as he started his junior year. He became very patriotic about World War II, and he had enlisted in the Marines. So there was a 4-year gap in his Baylor education. But at Baylor, she achieved her formal education as a PhD, put hubby through. She worked while he went to class, and she also typed papers and homework for his friends for a fee. And word spread about how fast and accurate she was. Her clientele grew, and she said that with all the various papers and homework she read and proofread, she got a 2-year flash higher education. By her 30s, after many moves and a few job changes for Nathan, she was a stay-at-home mom, a mother of 3, a wife and suburban homemaker. During my childhood, she was that overqualified woman producing 3 home-cooked meals a day, 7 days a week, expressing herself artistically by flower arranging and cake baking, sewing 90% of her and my clothes, and running the household when my father was out of town for his calamity insurance adjusting. When her youngest, my younger brother, reached school age, she joined my father in his travels, and they left my grandmother in charge of our home and us, the kids, in her absence. Her period of exciting travel with Nathan to Miami, to New Orleans, and other cities that had experienced hurricanes and tornadoes lasted 2 years, then ended abruptly. As our family doctor said, the big C, cancer, took my father down fast. 19 months after his diagnosis, he was gone at age 47, and my mother was a widow at 40. As a self-employed businessman with his calamity insurance adjusting, when Nathan got sick, Ernestine had to find a job to support the family. She also had a job to throw herself into after he was gone. And when he died, she had 1 year of work experience under her belt, and she stayed with the manufacturing firm that she'd been with. That job as a billing clerk at the manufacturing firm had paid his medical bills. It had been a wise choice for our family for her to pull herself away from tending him during his illness to give us the stability we needed. It was painful but necessary. I will digress for a spell and tell you about where in history Ernestine and Nathan found themselves. They were the children who grew up in the Great Depression. Ernestine was born the year of the crash, 1929. Her duties with my grandfather had included sharing his farm's bounty with others who had no land or food. She had learned to do and did the hard things because they needed to be done. In 1998, journalist Tom Brokaw wrote a book about my parents' generation, aptly called The Greatest Generation. Brokaw wrote that it is, I believe, the greatest generation any society has ever produced. He argued that these men and women fought not for fame and recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. In this vein, and along with others of their generation, Ernestine and Nathan did the right things as they saw them. I will digress and also tell you she was a bit of a mystic. She met Ted, my husband, a few years after he and I had become friends. And at about the 20-year friendship mark, she asked me, "Honey, why aren't you with Ted?" She was always a few steps ahead of me because that was 20 years before he and I got together. Back to how she eventually got to truck driving, which is what we're here about. Ernestine threw herself into office work. That 3 years 3 years after leaving her role as supermom, she had been made vice president of operations for the manufacturing firm. It involved moving from Waco to Bryan, Texas, and uprooting my brother to change school districts right as he started high school. He was not happy. She moved my grandmother in with her, which also made my brother not happy, so she could keep my grandmother's and brother's care constant. For 3 years, she worked to be the best mom she could be and the best employee she could be, but she finally realized there was no appreciation for her efforts. The president of the company had noticed how hard she was working, so he hired her a male assistant to reward her for all this hard work. She found out, as he insulted her by paying the man $25,000 a year more than she made, that upon confrontation, the president said the reason was because he was a man. He had a family. My brother and I were apparently not family. Pure cold fury flashed, but she decided to bide her time. She didn't quit. She knew there had to be something better. Then along came better. My brother was changing careers, my older brother. He was making a big transformation from white collar himself to truck driver. And he asked my mother if she would be interested in learning to drive the big rigs. He was in a driving school sponsored by a reputable company, and they were admitting women in that training class. The school was 20 miles from her Bryan home, so she could take training without disturbing the household. She jumped at the chance and said goodbye to long days with little appreciation for her talents. The choice to train was an easy one for her, but the culture she entered was pushing back. This was the 70s. Some of the trainers and the managers wanted the women gone from their previous all-male profession. The trainers would send her with limited instruction to do cumbersome or difficult tasks. Remembering her childhood at her dad's truck yard, plus using her own common sense, she managed to excel at what they expected her to fail. Her first managers, after she got out of training, attempted to get her to quit by being tougher on her than some of the other male drivers. They tried to break her and make her quit by giving her the local, ugly, messy, hot and dusty jobs for her training drives. She delivered powder for cement plants, so she'd come home at night covered in a crust of cement. She was given sulfur trucks to deliver with all of the odors and stains from the liquid sulfur. She kept coming back. Without whining or complaining, she kept coming back. Graduation from training and entry to long-haul employment was a certainty for her. Her record got her hired permanently for long haul by the company, and that company did both the local jobs and the long haul chemical and petrochemical deliveries. Your mother wears combat boots. No, actually, she wore rather useful but well-turned Wellington black leather steel-toed boots. She had applied her sensibility about fit and presentation to her uniform. She applied her sewing skills to the uniform shirts and squared the hems so they could stay neatly untucked. She substituted an exact color match in Navy women's slacks that fit her better than the uniform pants and had an elastic waistband for ease of use. No stiff leather belt for her. With her neat shirt, fitted slacks, and sensible steel-toed boots, she looked in uniform, but was very much her own woman. Management did not complain. I think they were a little afraid of her. As the trainers and managers had loaded the discomfort on her, she made allies among other drivers who had previously been the focus of the grief dealt by management. Usually this was a racial bias. Now it was gender. Her determination carried her through, and they praised her release to drive long haul. Long haul meant sharing a cab. It also meant a lot more money. But long haul meant sharing a cab with another driver so the truck and load could stay moving for at least 20 hours a day. Mom and my older brother became a team for a year and a half and shared those duties. By the end of the first year with my brother, Mom was being courted by one of her driver trainers, her former driver trainers. After months of courting, when they were both in town, and after checking each other's driving records with the company, we 3 adult children had a stepfather, and Ernestine had a new driving partner. Now I want to share with you lessons from life in a truck. First lesson, my mother stressed, a load is a load. You are not paid by age, gender, seniority, or any other attribute. You are paid by the load and its delivery value. Drive, deliver safely, and return, and you get paid the value of that load's delivery. Remember that VP pay disparity? Gone. Pick your CB handle carefully. This was the 70s. You will hear it a lot on the lonely roads as the people lend themselves to CB call-outs as they're driving about road conditions for the drivers behind them. Which truck stop has fresh pie, and whether the weigh station is open. This is very important to independent truck drivers. The big companies didn't overload trailers because they didn't want to be fined, but sometimes independent truckers would run with a little bit heavy load. And if so, when someone said, weigh station open and functioning, a trucker with a too heavy load would take a side road and not go through the weigh station. He'd delay his trip a little bit to get away from being fined. After using their handles a time or two, just testing them out, Duchess and Seagull both had reservations, but they were stuck because other drivers had picked up those handles. Use the stops for fuel, pie, a shower, and a fill-in of your logbooks wisely. Those logbooks are important. Every hour you're driving is gauged by the regulators. They can stop you and check your weight at the weigh stations, check your logbooks. And if you're running hot over time, you've put in too many hours without a break, you can get in big trouble and pay a lot for it. Watch your hours and get your sleep when you can. The good news for Mom was driver partners only see each other at truck stop breaks. Otherwise, one is in the bunk and the other is driving. This works well when you have little to say to one another. Pack your personal gear carefully. You do not have much room in the cab of a truck and less back in the bunk. Travel as light as you can, but do carry emergency supplies. My mom's emergency supplies: a gallon of drinking water, a heater coil that plugged into the lighter to heat such water, and then the instant coffee, cocoa, tea bags, and soups that can be made with the hot water. Carry emergency little cans of meat and fruit and things that come in small cans and take up little space. Carry crackers. These supplies fed a stranded pair of truck drivers that my mom and her co-driver found, not my parents, my mom and co-driver. And these drivers had been stuck in their truck cab in an icy embankment, out of power and battery for about a day and a half. They were cold and hungry when they were discovered. And so with mom's heater coil cooking, they were fed as they waited for an emergency crew that Mom and Seagull called. If you're interested, ask me later about those special accommodations women had to make for driving in big trucks. Lessons for car drivers, and this is something we all need to bide, and this is something she kept stressing to me over and over. If you are driving behind a big truck and you cannot see their mirrors, they cannot see you. As you get closer and you can't see their mirrors, you're blind to them. They have no idea you're behind them. And this can weigh into how they move in traffic. If you're in heavy traffic and there's a truck, leave the truck that attractive empty space in front of it. Their brakes take time to work, and the truck will travel some distance before stopping. Give them the distance. If you see a truck trying to enter traffic, slow down if you safely can and let them in. It is safer for everyone if a loaded truck can smoothly enter the flow of traffic. This is the big one she kept stressing to me. Respect trucks at night at high speeds on the highways. Think about everyone's safety and don't crowd the front of a truck. A truck carrying an 80,000-pound load going over 50 miles an hour cannot stop completely within the range of its lights. Think about that. They can't stop before they see something outside, just outside the front range of their lights. So if they are forced to stop suddenly and you are that car in front of the truck, you are in danger, or the truck must leave the road to keep from hitting you. If they're loaded with toxic chemicals, this could be bad for a whole community. That last tip is why truck drivers for the chemical tank industry were called suicide jockeys. So my mother's last happy years of employment were as a suicide jockey. Humor among truckers included calling those chemical tank trucks shiny bottles, and that those suicide jockeys live in bottle tops. Mom and her driver husband had an 11-and-a-half-year run as partners. They divorced. That was something she never saw on her life list. Bad road ahead. A good truck driver knows to slow down when it's safely done and read the road ahead. For Ernestine, poor health became her personal bad road. She read the road ahead and relaxed into being a retired driver after her heart attack and after my stepfather left. She was also a wonderful mother and grandmother in that period. She quit smoking cold turkey, which is what caused the heart attack, so she could add some more years to enjoying civilian life. Her life lesson to me was how to transform with grace, treating each stage of life with compassion towards self and others. My takeaway from that lesson was to embrace change. How? Lean into it. Lean into it and change.